Back again with a SUPboarder review, and yes, you guys have been waiting a while for this since our first look video, but we have got the full review of the RRD LongSUP 9.4. We got some really good conditions. We had to wait a bit of a while for it, but we surfed it in super small up to the bigger stuff, and this is what we thought of the board. So this is a brand new board for RRD. They didn't have one last year. This is their stab at the longboard SUP surfing market, and to be honest, on first impressions, they've made a pretty good go at it. 9.4 long by 29 wide by 4¼ inches thick, brings that literage in at about 126 litres in volume. Has a 2+1 fin setup. It weighs, this one when we weighed it, weighed 8.5 kilograms, so it's pretty light, and it retails at €1,945. It's available in two constructions, a wood construction and this construction, the LTD. This may look like a full-on sort of sanded down carbon version of a board, and also the weight may relate to it as well, but it is just an EPS foam core with a mixture of PVC wraps and epoxy glass on top of that as well. So let's move on to the SUPboarder impressions and really get on with the good stuff. The actual look of the board, you guys know whether you're going to like it or hate it. Personally, do really like it. I really like the orange. It's so simple, the sort of Italian RRD styling. Nothing really in your face, but just a good, stylish looking board, we think anyway. As far as I said, the construction, the toughness of this board, I think is probably one of the toughest boards on the market. Yes, there are full brushed carbon boards on the market, and especially from other brands that are equally as tough, but this is an incredibly tough board. We have been putting it, look at that, it just sounds solid. It hasn't got any sort of gel coat finish on it, so you cannot chip any of the paint off. We've had paddle marks, we've had scratches, we've had bramble marks when we've been walking down to the beach, but this board doesn't do anything, to be honest. It just shrugs it all off like it's not even there. So the finish of the board and the construction of the board is definitely a big plus for us. Really impressed with that, and actually with the weight of it as well, that's a pretty light board for the construction. As far as the fittings and features that are on the board, you've got your good quality RRD EVA deck pad you find on all of the boards. Yes, it's white, and you know I'm personally a massive fan of white, but it does look really good if you can keep it clean. Nicely color coded back to a really thick, heavy duty sort of stomp tail pad, which is a big plus here. You can ram your foot into it, you know you are on the back of the board. Nice to have. And finished off at the tail there with a double leashing plug that we've used both for if you want to go out in the bigger stuff, so it gives you a bit more strength to the board, or you could run it as a single leashing plug too. Nice big comfortable recessed handle, pressure valve, and we have also waxed up towards the nose so we can do some nose riding, and up at the front there, just in case you're wondering, is our GoPro sticky mount, so when we're doing our filming. So moving on to the shape and performance of the board, definitely this is a more traditional longboard styling board to a more progressive longboard styling board. What I mean by that, it's obviously got the 2+1 fin setup, and it's got a larger rounded nose. The rails are nice and low, nice and pulled in, so you can get a lot of drive, especially if it gets big. The board doesn't bounce out, it gives you a lot of grip on the wave face. If we turn the board over, which you'll see is where the most of the longboard magic happens, there is a large teardrop sort of shape here. You can probably just make it out in some angles, and that is a huge concave which is there to help the nose riding, which will go on again in a minute. So up there, that's to help the nose riding. The nose kick, which is a rock line at the front of the board, is pretty flat. There isn't much nose kick there. Then it goes quite flat towards the tail of the board. That's going this way, that's pretty flat there. And then we've got a nice healthy amount of tail kick there, which really helps when you actually need that, to be honest, because there isn't much nose kick. So for those performance turns, the sharper turns, getting your body weight back over the tail of the board keeps the nose up and enables you to do those faster pivoting turns. So moving back, the board is pretty flat in the center with a small V, so a slightly raised bit in the middle, and then it goes into a sort of double concave small V here, so that the highest bit is in the middle of the board. Sort of standard sort of shape. A lot of the other longboards we tested, very similar shape around this area. Different at the nose, very similar at this area and towards the tail. So let's talk about this half of the board, the front half of the board, how it performs on paddling out and catching some waves. When you're paddling out, you will notice that the front half of the board, the nose of the board, sits very low to the waterline. So you have got to trim your footwork back a little bit more than probably most boards, and also when you're going over waves, get your footwork back to punch out over the waves. Because it's really thin in the rails are relatively low volume, it does go through the waves very easily, and I didn't really find getting out in the waves or going through the waves a problem at all. But because it's flat and this large concave here, which is going to help the nose riding, which we'll talk about in a minute, it does make paddling the board relatively slow for its length and width. You'd think a board like this would have a bit more glide. It hasn't got that much glide, which proves it actually is designed obviously for surfing more than the sort of flat water, getting into flat water paddling. As far as catching waves and paddling for smaller sort of slopey, slacky waves, you have got to put your effort in. You've got to put a good paddle stroke in to get down the wave. And that is because of the flatter nose rocker and also that concave up at the nose there. That will suck you down, and it will actually be more of a drawback until you catch a wave. It's definitely not a really hard board to catch waves on by any means, but you're going to have to put a bit more power in than you would do to another equivalent sort of size board on the market without the concave up there. When you are on a wave, the board is an absolute scream. This concave, as we're still talking about the nose section, offers so much stability if you're riding up at the mid section of the board or you're walking your way up to the nose riding. It is unreal how much that makes such a difference to the stability of the board. A lot of acceleration through the midsection, so really fast on waves, and to be honest, this was probably as quick as our more performance smaller boards when you're having to work them and trim them. Bear in mind, they're lighter, they've got less drag, and this board will probably keep up with them, if not maybe be a little bit faster on a sort of steeper wave section because of the flatter profile, the flatter nose rocker, and that concave giving you a bit more grip at the nose there. Moving back then, because of these nice low profile rails, the low volume in rails, it does make the bottom turning and the top turning really good fun, and it doesn't at any point feel like the board is too lively for the speed of the wave or even maybe the size of the wave. Size of waves, we were using them in small stuff like knee high up to maybe head and a half, not really big stuff, but about that sort of size. Still pretty big for a board like this really. Looking at the fin area, they've got future side fins, you've got a US centre box fin, it comes with an 8.5 centre and a 12 centimetre front fins. The fin setup like that's your 2+1 setup. This is really good in sort of average size surf of up to about head high if you're a bigger guy. Personally, if you found that the surfing, you wanted to do faster turns, a bit more aggressive turns, get rid of this fin and get a smaller fin, get like a 7-inch or something in there, and it did transform the board. We ran it as a complete thruster. We're almost a complete thruster. We had a 13 in the back and 12s at the front, and then the whippiness of the board came around quite a lot more. Most of the clips in this video are run in this setup. So if you want to do a more sort of faster turning facey board, more of an aggressive board, change around the fin at the back there. The first time we jumped on this board, we didn't have any other facts or measurements by the measurements that are on the board. There was no information out there. We didn't really get anything from RRD until we got the volumes of the boards dropped to us, and this was 126 litres. Our first impressions, we thought this was 115. So it does feel a little bit smaller than the volume it is. It is 126 litres, but the volume of where they distribute it, quite thin in the rails, quite thin up at the rails and nose there, it does feel a little bit smaller. So just bear that in mind if you are comparing it to a 126 litre board. It does float 126 litres, but it feels a little bit smaller than that when you're actually standing on it. So who do we think this board will suit best? Well, weight-wise, you're going to be able to get away from being pretty light, I mean any sort of weight, 55 kilograms, up to about 85, 90 kilograms if you're a bit more experienced in the surf. Let's say they have got 3 other sizes, or they've got 3 sizes in total. They've got a 9 foot, this is a 9.4, and they do a 9.8 as well. As far as paddler's ability, this board is going to offer a really wide range. You could probably, if you're a lightweight rider, you could actually get into SUP surfing on this, or if you're a intermediate SUP surfer on a 11 foot or a big board and you've got into catching a few waves, you could easily jump down onto this board, and this board will probably last you a long time. You won't really want to have to jump down to the 8.5s to get that performance, because this board still has that. If you're a more advanced, or you've been longboard surfing, or you're transitioning over from sort of prone longboarding, this sort of board, you're going to really enjoy it. It's got loads of glide on the wave and loads of nose riding capabilities to walk up and down the board to get a lot out of it. So really big range of users there. The only thing to bear in mind is the volume of the board is a little bit smaller than it feels. So if you're riding a 140 litre all-round board compared to this 126 litre, there will be a big difference in the tippiness of the board. But it's definitely nothing that you can't get over by just paddling it a bit and flat water first. So to conclude, pros and cons and value for money. Pro, it's the easiest board to nose ride we have tested, and it does just put a lot of big smiles on your face from knee high up to overhead. Cons, definitely have a look at the fin setup. It works absolutely fine with what it comes with, but if you really want to get something out of it and a bit more of a turning performance to the board, change that center fin for something slightly smaller. And it has also got a domed deck. I personally don't find that an issue at all, but I know Dave and Will like boards with flatter decks, so if you're one of those people too, it's just something to be aware of. And value for money, well, it's definitely not the most expensive, but it is up there, isn't it? 1,945 euros. That's quite a lot of money, but it's a hell of a nice shape, and it is tough. It is a tough, durable board. And compared to the wood RRD, which is 1,813 euros, I'd be putting the extra couple €100 into the LTD. A great value board for its shape, and I think nothing else can really touch it at that price point. Hope you found that SUPboard review interesting and informative, and it's giving you enough information to put your hand in your pocket and buy one of these beauties. If not, there's SUPboarder Pro 2, which you can check out, where we compare this board to other leading longboards on the market too. But until next time, we'll see you on SUPboarder or on YouTube.